But then I'd like to hear from you, because you each have your own unique interest. In His Steps came about literally walking in the footsteps of Jesus. But as we did that, we had to ask ourselves, how would Jesus have us respond to what we're encountering here today? So with each of you, I'd like to hear your questions, your ideas, anything that might move you as far as taking those steps. This last team that just came back was a small, very focused team. There were only 4 of them. None of them were medical. I'm not a medical person myself. So how we got started even with some of this is I have been serving in Palestine, in Bethlehem, for the last 23 years. I was sent out by a Presbyterian church in California, and it completely changed my life. Now, it's a challenging place. Everything has changed through the years a lot as we see what steps can be taken. But how we got to the breast cancer, what actually came about 10 years into it. I had a friend who was a professor at Bethlehem University, Christian University in Bethlehem, come to me and say, we're seeing a lot of unusual challenges with breast cancer. You bring a lot of Americans over here. Is there anything you can do? What can I do? I'm low tech, I'm not medical, but we did have years and opportunity to get to know the local people. So that's kind of what my role began. And we did start bringing teams over who had medical expertise, such as Judy, glad you're here today, thank you, and other teams that would come and actually say, we can make a difference. We can help people there. Let's see what we can do. So this is how we kind of got started with breast cancer. Judy, you mentioned the family. I do want to just say hello to my mother, Norma, who was one of the co-founders. She's walked with me through all of this and is also a breast cancer survivor. So thank you, Mom, for your constant support. The pictures here are the team that just got back, and they were there in October for a couple of weeks on the ground. We started the tour in Petra in Jordan. Petra goes back hundreds of years BC, and it's kind of a good spot to just start to get the feel for the ancient history that goes on there. The one man on the camel is a friend of mine from Chicago. I say a friend because we talked on the phone on Zoom calls for about 2 to 3 years, working with organizations like True Purpose, Feel Real, and then most recently, we studied collaborative operating systems, how to work together on projects and teams and even in our purposes. I had never met Andy in person until American Airlines stranded me in Chicago one time, and I had a chance to have coffee with him, but we felt like we knew each other from years of just talking on the phone. Now, on the way to Bethlehem, when we start in the amazing Petra, the team consisted of 4 people, as I mentioned. Devon is a lay pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Concord, California. She was a surprise addition to our team. As I was sitting in the church and we had the chance afterwards to talk, she was leading a study there. And I just started asking, well, how did you become a lay pastor? And she told me, as we were sitting there, well, I was working with the Cancer Institute doing metrics and data development for breast cancer, and my mouth literally dropped open. It's like, this is exactly where we're at today. Would you be interested in coming? And this began her journey, too. Unfortunately, this team came back with over 4,060 photographs, numerous videos. Thanks for your help in getting at least 1 or 2 of them out today. We're still editing, and so a lot of this is new information that we will be bringing out. Don't have it all today. The woman next to her is Rachel. She is part of the Feel Real. She's a media consultant, and also the girlfriend of Andy, who was on the camel on the other end. The one person that you will recognize is Dan Sweatman. We were thrilled to have Dan join this team. He wishes he could be with you today. Kinda. He's happy in Honduras, okay? And we do look forward to hearing from him as soon as he returns. I do have a message from him. But he was so helpful because he knows how to put teams together. He knows how to build relationships with the people in the church. We are planning another trip to go in the spring and in the fall, and I hope you'll consider doing that. Some will not be able to take that journey. We still want you to feel connected. We want you to be able to know some of the people that we meet on the ground. And most importantly, to be able to continue to pray with very exact, explicit need requests. We want to stay in communication with that because it does make such a difference. I put this in there because it was just sent to me from Bethlehem for Epiphany, which is where we're at right now. Sometimes we forget that Jesus was a refugee from Bethlehem, and we work a lot with refugees. Remembering that he too had to leave his home. His parents took him to Egypt, where he stayed for some time. In the photo, we're also reminded of the Magi, who were not from the area, who were not Jewish. This was the gift Jesus brought to all the world, to the Gentiles as well. And you'll see in their diversity, even as we pray today, God loves all of us. Now, how do we get to Bethlehem? Even from their journey, they went first to Jerusalem. This window is very important to me. It is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's actually the Greek Orthodox portion of the church. The Greek Orthodox Church has helped us sponsor visas for about 3 years, was the maximum. The churches there do have a network that come together. There's a lot of interfaith work that goes on the ground. What a lot of times people don't see if you come on just a big bus tour is the actual church. The church on the ground speaks Arabic. There are a couple of Messianic congregations that do speak in Hebrew. But overall, if you come to meet the church, you're going to hear them praying to Allah. And I say that because until we got there, we had a very different perception of what that looks like. So from this window looking out, this actually is right on the property, and it's looking south to Bethlehem. And it's important because it's only 5 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Here to Harrisburg, maybe. T might even be a little bit further than that. And I want you to have that in mind as we talk about the needs of what we're working with over there. Because in those 5 miles, we have women that need to get permission to go to Jerusalem, 5 miles away, to see a doctor for treatment. Not only for treatment once, but every time they need to go, such as for chemotherapy, they need to go through the permission process every trip. It can take months. It literally too late for treatment, often. So why do they need permission to travel that far? I often ask that question. If the medications are sitting in Jerusalem 5 miles away, why don't you put the medications in the car and bring them back to Bethlehem? They have excellent doctors. They have a completely fragmented medical system. When we had workshops on the ground there, we just had 8 women that signed up to go to get mammograms. 7 of them were found to need additional diagnosis. Of that, it took 5 different appointments just to get an ultrasound. So when we go to look at the medical situation on the ground, we have all of the challenges of cancer here. And we have navigators. Don't know that Donna was able to join. She's a cancer navigator. We've had navigators that help you through the process. But you're working in medical systems that at least have a consistent flow. There, we need a navigator who also has relationship in every one of these medical centers, because you might have to go to 5 of them to get an ultrasound. I'm going to share a little clip, I hope, inshallah, that is not working. Let's see if we still have it minimized, excuse me. Nathan, where did you put me? Here we go. Now, Rachel did this and sent it to me. I'm definitely not able to accomplish all of this, but I did think I would share my message that she took. Women are dying of breast cancer in the West Bank at a high number. If we can provide education, we can improve the survivor rate with early detection. Being able to provide a mammogram for the women that come needs to be available in the beginning to be successful. We need to find the women that are trusted in each community and train them to be able to give early education, early detection, find the resources. They can do this. We have to get it in the hands of the women. It's not uncommon in the region to have girls as young as 14 years old. Barriers are hard to open. They're there for a reason. People don't want you exposing the problems. Through the 22 years of working all the way to the president's office, we have always worked through the local people. Oh, sorry, you're not catching this. And our model has always been, this needs to be self-sustaining. Empowering the women locally to get the mammograms for early detection. This will save lives. Together, let's go beyond the shadows to help the women here in the West Bank. We need your support. Make your tax-deductible donation today. You are making a world of difference. Okay, well, none of this is working. What I would like to do is just read for a moment just a couple of statements that you weren't able to see. Of all cancers, breast cancer has the highest rate of death among women in the West Bank. They figure about 70% of the women diagnosed are already late stage by the time they get diagnosed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get, maybe. Well, there's just a couple statements left. We lose it when we go to the video. It's not uncommon in the region to have girls as young as 14 years diagnosed with breast cancer. I wanted you to hear that part. When they first came to me and said we're getting unusual cases of breast cancer, I too said, what's happening here? So before we did anything, I started searching for, who's this 14-year-old girl? Is this really happening? I talked to researchers here at both Avera and Sanford, and they said, on research, we may see cases as young as 20. It has happened. It's not uncommon, or it is uncommon, but it does happen. We've not seen anyone as young as 14 years old. When I went to look for this, I went to the Minister of Health in the Hebron district, which is where she was at, and I met with the Minister of Health. I went with the Mayor of Hebron and the Governor of Hebron. This is how they do things, as you know. And they introduced me to a doctor who has been here in this congregation, Dr. Jihad Shawar, which is how we kind of got started there. He's an oncologist surgeon, and he's done a lot to develop that. And we sat down, and I asked him, did you really have a 14-year-old girl with breast cancer? He's telling me about her case. He said there's not much more we can do. It's already late stage. But he started to break up emotionally, tearfully. And he said, not only is it difficult to see these young women come in. But he said, in the last 6 months, I just lost my wife, who was, I believe, 26 years old at the time, to breast cancer. Now, as a pretty renowned surgeon in Hebron, he was able to get his wife permission to go to Jerusalem for treatment. He was not able to get permission for his children to get to Jerusalem to see her before she died. This is not going to solve our problem. They have excellent doctors. We need to figure out how to get the resources into their hands, as well as they stay very current as much as possible on training, and keeping up to the latest best practice. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Let me just see if I can get to this one final section here. What you kind of missed was a picture of the workshops that we just did. We've done workshops throughout the area. I know Judy and Arla Peterson and several that have come have been part of that outreach for awareness, education, helping the women to know, as Judy did, that you can survive that. You can be a survivor for breast cancer. You just have to detect it earlier, so it's treatable in a lot of cases. Okay, I think that's enough from here. Now can we get back to? Please. Thank you. Yes.
And I think this is one misconception that people have, that Allah is somebody different. Allah. It's on. Allah is actually the name for God, and is the same God that we worship. But it's the Arabic name for God. And so we think of this as being, the Arabic's God, but it isn't. It's the same God as we have.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, Judy. When we sit, the church that I usually go to when I'm in Bethlehem is a Lutheran church there. In the area, when Protestantism came in, of course, Greek Orthodox, Catholic were already there, but the Protestants came in, and what they did is they divided the area where everything south of Jerusalem, the Protestant church, is Lutheran. For everything north of Jerusalem, the Protestant church is Episcopal. And we all come around and support them, okay? So this is why you don't see Presbyterian and Methodist and everyone there, but we sit in the Lutheran church. When I'm in church on Sunday mornings, and I did have the chance to sing in the choir there for a while, they pray Allah. Allah is the name of God. That's Arabic for God. So that is something we don't hear here. Thank you for pointing that out, because often it will become controversial. Patient navigation we brought in. Dr. Lauren Cheddar, an oncologist here, introduced us to the Dr. Harold P. Freeman Institute of Patient Navigation. As he was on our board, we made several calls, and Dr. Freeman, who's now in his mid-80s, referred us to his training developer, Lucia Samaras. Lucia is still with us today. She puts in so much time and energy in helping us develop patient navigation. And why navigation? Well, Dr. Freeman developed this in Harlem about 25 years ago, a little over. It is the navigation that is now used throughout the country in all of our hospitals. This is where the training began. So as we look at our patient navigation, we have the best in this country using their services and their skills and taking it to look at how we might help the women in Palestine. What happened in Harlem is very similar in a lot of ways to what we see there. There's a lack of resources, a lack of education and understanding about cancer, a lack of trust even in the services. All of these problems with cancer that we have here, now you've got the additional problem on the ground of being able to get access. creates a whole different scenario. But this is why navigation is so critically important, because in a nutshell, what navigation does is it identifies barriers and it finds a way to overcome it. Now, we are not going to be able to take on the system or the power, but we can teach the women the importance of early detection, how to find their way to get to that ultrasound, whatever is needed next, how to overcome the barriers. It's not easy. We've got a lot of work to do. But this is why navigation is so critical, and once we establish navigation, it's good for all illnesses. Whatever illness you've got, a navigator can help you find your way. It's good for a lot of situations, but we're just going to focus it for the time being on getting it established for breast cancer. Some of these pictures will be familiar to some of you, as the one on the left is the Bethlehem Cancer Treatment Center, Beit Jala. And this is actually a workshop, I do believe, Judy, this is from your time there, isn't it? Yeah. Where they were able to go in and talk with the women, the nurses and doctors there, about breast cancer awareness and how we can work together to get the women earlier detection. Now with that, and we've heard several times, doctors would come up and say, we're not taught how to give a breast exam. They are getting a few more female doctors there, which especially in that culture is required. They couldn't go to a male doctor, but even the male doctors have not been taught how to give breast exams. And so there's many, many roles that are needed to come and just help everyone be able to get those diagnoses early. On the other side, this is Dr. Jihad Shawar, who was here in our congregation several years ago when he was working with Sanford and Avera. The other woman is a professional nurse patient navigator, and she's there teaching some of the students in Hebron about navigation. I think this too is from Judy's workshop, actually, the Beit Jala Hospital and the nurses there. Why do we focus on Beit Jala Bethlehem? It's the main cancer treatment facility for the entire country of Palestine. If you're diagnosed, this is where you must go to get treatment. They have established a beautiful children's cancer treatment area as well. But someone may go for 1 or 2 chemotherapy treatments, and then they don't have medication. So if you want to continue your treatment, you have to get permission to go to Jerusalem. That's the part about bringing the medications back that just isn't working. Specialized training, this is actually Dr. Jihad at Avera. He worked both with Drs. Avera and Sanford. He's the president of the Cancer Patients Charitable Society there. He's also currently the head of the Medical Association. His role is so strong there. We are very thankful to have his guidance going through it. Now, he faces unbelievable challenges. Part of the reason that those women couldn't get their ultrasounds is there are doctors everywhere that haven't been paid yet this year. Now, I want to ask all your friends, how many doctors do you think would go a year without pay? You'd find another way of doing it. They're still there. They're still trying to do what they can. This one is from one of the refugee camps that we work in, Arub. I just love it because the women are beautiful and I love their scarves. So this picture stays with us. But it's another workshop there. We've done a lot of different projects. This particular mammography machine is a stereotactic mammogram. The first one in the country that Dr. Jihad was able to provide. When I go for my exams, I often can't find, they don't use stereotactic, some places do, but it's the latest, greatest equipment. They couldn't send their radiologists out to actually get training because this is 3D and it's different than just reading a regular mammogram. So some of the doctors here, Dr. Tom Sink and so forth, have advised on how to read. And they say it's just time, you just need practice, but training. Well, this is a group that was over, Dr. Scott Boyens is in this group. He's a primary care doctor from Sanford. He and his wife and their 13-year-old daughter came over and helped serve. We also have right in front of Dr. Scott is Amado Padilla, who's a friend and a professor from Stanford University. Now, Sanford and Stanford do work together on occasion. That wasn't the case here. They just met. But it just kind of shows you the level of professionalism that they are bringing in to help train some of these people. This is a picture of interfaith work. Right in the front on the stone is the mayor of Dar es Salaam, who is Muslim. Right next to him is the priest who lives in Dar es Salaam, small village, about the size of Lenox, okay? They work side by side, they live, they interact, they share marriage, weddings, births, all of these celebrations are open to everyone in that community. Bethlehem at night. Now, some of you won't be surprised by that picture because you know Dan Sweatman is a photographer that climbs mountaintops all around the world. Nate's gone, but I'm going to try and show you his. Okay, it might be working.
When there's ownership from the local community and listening to what they need and they want, that's when success happens. That's when longevity happens. And it was neat, especially being in the villages, seeing it all led and driven by the locals and to work within themselves to gain access for mammograms. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, and an amazing, difficult endeavor, but so needed.
Now, we cut Dan short in his message there. Hopefully we'll be able to have him speak a little bit more about his time on the journey there. Our breast cancer project is called Mara Lomara, which means woman to woman. And that is kind of our secret strategy. If we can't overcome the systems, if we can't make quick changes, we keep saying, get it in the hands of the women, they will know what to do with it. And so it is, from one woman to another, teaching the next about the need of early detection and how they can possibly get through this process. Now, it's difficult because what we see there, and here's where your prayers are so important, it's reaching a point of not caring. Now, that doesn't mean they don't care about each other or themselves, but it's so difficult to get through the process. It's like, why care? All I can do to protect myself is to just not care. I can't get there. We just had one of the women that was detected talk to her children, and she's no longer even attempting to get to a doctor. She said, it's better for me to spend my time with my family. It's too stressful. This particular, and we visit these sites, Beit Omar, Beit Awa, Deir Samet is where we just did a workshop. I know Judy and the other groups have also worked there. This particular article was actually in the New York Times. Part of what's difficult about this challenge, and even what to come back and talk to you about, is that we don't get information that's accurate. What I see with my eyes, with those who come and see, come back and want to tell you is difficult because it's not what we're hearing here. So how do we get an understanding of how we can help, the difference that we can make? So when this was printed in the New York Times, it quoted our Sarah. Our Sarah. It was so exciting to see. It's coming out in the American media. We visit these toxic burn sites all around Deir Samet, Beit Awa area, which is why we chose that specific area to begin our navigation. Everything from Israel is dumped there, from the electronics to the tires. The air is so toxic, even in their windows. And that's just the e-waste dump site. It's where they go to burn it. Constant fire of e-waste, plastic, garbage, blocks out the sun. Dura, this is from 2019 when we were there, sickens residents in the West Bank. Efforts to fix the problem have become mired in politics. But they shouldn't, because the Jewish community right next to them also sees the black toxic air coming. It doesn't stay on one side of the wall. It is creating an environmental nightmare everywhere. Black rain, they call it. Shepherds say they're losing their sheep at an alarming rate. This is what we were just talking about on the other side of the wall. The Israeli communities also see the e-waste scraps. This is a cousin of one of our director, actually, in Palestine, Mahmoud. You might have heard me talk about Mahmoud. This is his uncle, who has lost 3 of his children in the Beit Awa area. The doctors all say it's attributed to this toxic air. Recently, it was the 4-year-old daughter that died from a respiratory illness to the pollution from these burns. It's difficult to stop. There's no jobs in that area, not much income, a lot of poverty. And so collecting the copper wires as a form of income. Now all of a sudden the mayors have to deal with, how do we stop this when this is what our people are living on? Again, the sheep in the area. Funding from the U.S. State Department for Health and Environmental Risk Areas was cut last year in the wake of a passage of an American law that subjects foreign entities that accept American aid to the jurisdiction of American courts over terrorism-related lawsuits. Now that's a mouthful, and it's got lots of scary words in it. But all of that is to say we can make a difference. We are responsible. There's a lot that can be done once we know about it. And I am so thankful for this congregation and many others, especially the Presbyterian Church. I forgot to bring a message that we have from our former GA director who's been over there. It helps you to see how active our church is in trying to make a difference on the ground. Helping people doesn't have to have barriers or take sides. It's simply just helping people. This is another friend that we just discovered down there, a 13-year-old boy. You can see the kinds of cancers that are popping up, not just breast cancer. We've done different projects through the years. It hasn't always focused on breast cancer. Some of these, we brought in a shipping container of wheelchairs made by Hope Haven right here in South Dakota. But you know their criteria. We had a patient for every wheelchair we sent. It was measured for each and every one to give them the right size, the kind of wheelchair that was needed. We also worked with, you'll see in the pictures, Dr. Medhat Taha. Dr. Taha has been showing me how to work on the ground there through the network. He is the chief medical doctor to the president in Ramallah, in Palestine. He opens doors for us. This is where the permissions come from, and we've got many. The current Minister of Health, her sister is a dear friend of mine in California. We just had coffee in Jerusalem. It's a challenge, but we can get the permissions, and we always work through the local processes. This is most important to us. We're not going in just to say, here's some funding, go do good things. No, we're coming alongside and we're seeing here's the process. Here's the way you can make a difference. Here's how it works. Alasan Charitable is a home for disabilities, and we brought doctors from the University of Minnesota to work there, a neurologist out of the U of M, as well as a physiatrist on the ground. Some of the most difficult cases are in this location. Here's our doctors. They're teaching at the Najah University in Nablus. The teams coming over are what give them hope. Even if you're not medical, you give them hope. You're hearing their story. And you can see I put this picture in just because this is how most negotiations happen. It isn't always at a conference table like you saw. You'll probably find a paper coffee cup sitting under the plastic chair out in the middle of somewhere, and this is the head of humanitarian assistance, Dr. Zafar Nobani, who's a dear friend, as well as the guides, the presidents, and so forth. Our board of reference in Palestine and in Israel, my last visa that was long-term was for the Israeli Minister of Health. There is nothing that has been hidden that is not being done above board. On the left is Mahmoud. This is our Mahmoud. He's been working with us for over 12 years. He does our logistics. He can make things happen on the ground like I can't even begin to imagine. This is part of our mainstay. Dr. Jihad, of course, you've met here. Naif Kasperi, another oncologist who's on our board. Afif Safia, I met him in California. We hosted him out. He was the U.S. ambassador, although we don't always call it ambassador, from Palestine. He's now in London. He isn't here any longer, so we don't get to see him often, but he continues to be a good reference on our board. And as I mentioned earlier, Zafar Nobani, he's the head of humanitarian assistance. He's also on the board of Bank Al-Quds, Bank Jerusalem. Local practitioners are working really hard. The challenges are really great. This year in December, Dr. Jihad hosted the second annual International Medical Conference. We are expecting a third. We are hoping that we even have some local Sioux Falls doctors that will be presenting papers at the next conference. This is how they stay connected. This is how they stay current with best practices. Where there's love, miracles do happen. We see that. It is all about love. Every one of us knows someone who's battled breast cancer. You know how much love it takes to keep up the battle. We can help these women overcome many barriers. Lives are being saved. We have seen that. But love is really more of an interactive process. It's about what we do, not what we feel. It's a verb as well as a noun. We're starting a new program for our honorariums and memorials. It costs about $250 to get a mammogram. Transportation is required for a lot of these women. They have to get through a lot of barriers, so there's various specific costs each time we try to help a woman go for that. So anyone can help. The smallest contribution makes a big difference. You can honor a loved one who's battled breast cancer by supporting a Palestinian woman to get a mammogram and get help with treatment. Sarah, who's a candidate for patient navigation we've been working with, follows up with the local women who attend workshops in Beit Awa. We sponsor mammograms for individual donors, and recently we had a donation that came from First Presbyterian Women of Greenwood, Indiana. I was surprised. We met them at Louisville. And all of a sudden, they didn't forget, they're sponsoring mammograms. Just had to share that. Anyway, that's enough from me today. We do work very hard at navigation. We're not going to change that focus for a while, although we do also have, as we saw, everything from physical disabilities. We've had special needs teachers come. Whatever your skills, whatever your interest, you can find a way to make a relationship there. You can find a way to make a difference there. Walking in the footsteps of Jesus and asking, how would he have us respond to whatever you encounter today does make a difference. I would love to hear questions from you. I would love to hear your interest. Is there an area that strikes you that maybe we haven't tried yet?
Breast self-examination has been very common to all women have known 50 years or more. But this is new. This is new to them. They do not know what self-breast examination is. So part of what navigation is in the workshops that are held are done to teach women how to do breast self-exams, and then to hope that they share coffee with a neighbor and show them how to do it. It's the only way that that's going to happen. And until women start doing breast self-examinations, they don't have any idea whether they have unusual breast tissue or there's a lump or anything like that. So it's really the rudimentary, very, very basic kind of things that we're so used to. And the same as far as, when it's time for our yearly exam, we make a telephone call and we go and get it done. If you have so many barriers, there's all these reasons why of course you don't. And you just, I guess you just hope and pray you don't get breast cancer. But it's as common as 1 in 4 women. And we think about, well, how could cancer be that prevalent? Well, these burn sites become garbage dumps, and of course they cool off, and this becomes a place where children play. So if children are playing there, or women are even in that area when they're being burnt, of course they're exposed to these terrible toxins. But that's part of the reason why you have women who are earlier than usual getting breast cancer, because they probably spent some of their childhood playing on these toxic waste sites.
I was wondering about the water. This stuff all leaches down. Where do they get their drinking water?
Complicated question. There are water resources. The largest reservoir is underneath Bethlehem. All of it has been confiscated and gets sold back to them from Israel. Often the water, when I was just there, the water was off for 2 weeks. The thing that distinguishes which type of home it is, a Palestinian home will have tanks on their rooftop, where when there's water available, they have to store water there, okay? And yet it's not enough. At the same time, as far as it seeping into the ground, we see that. We see that getting flushed even into the agricultural farmland that's there. One of the villages right outside Bethlehem, cauliflower this big. It's beautiful. What they can grow there is now being contaminated. Yeah. That would be another area of environmental interest. And some of the data that we're trying to collect as we go along hopefully will lead to more research in those areas as well. It's definitely needed, and it's definitely contaminating.
Any other questions?
I just have an observation.
Yeah.
I think the navigator thing is such a good thing, because even in our country with all of our resources, when we reach that Medicare age, we need a navigator to figure out all of our options and what we do to get Medicare.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
What was your interest prior to breast cancer? You said you worked 10 years before you came under the breast cancer.
Oh, yes. The first trip when I went over with the Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church, we studied for a year before we went. And the leadership of that team were 2 Jewish friends that are still advising me to this day, Jeff and Leah Schindelman, and 2 Palestinian friends, Sima Dajani and Syed Awad. And they did it together. And we went to see what's the problem. Jesus can overcome these things. I felt sorry for them because by the 3rd day, I have to say we had a lot of anger. And the anger was, why don't we know this? Why are we not seeing what we are seeing today? It's really hard to come back and wrestle with that. So for the next decade, we said, okay, let's just take the choir. Let's just go. And the difference being, we still see the church. We still see the holy and historic sites when you come, okay? But we also meet the people. and they called it the Living Stones. The historic places are important to all of us, but the people that are living there, when I go into a friend of mine, Maher Kanawati, I don't have his video yet, it's coming, he has a tree, family history, on his wall, going back to the year 300. His family has always been there. He said, we don't have record beyond written down before then, but I'm pretty sure we were here then too. And so what started happening was we would just bring people, come and see, but meet the people. Let's develop relationships. Let's find out what they need on the ground. And so for a long time, that's what we did. And we meet with people in Israel. I have many, many Jewish friends in Israel. I don't ever want this to sound like it is a taking sides, because it's not. There's only one power there. There's only one way that these things can be overcome, okay? But at the same time, where is the need? Who's got the real need? And so we do end up doing more work in these remote and rural villages and the towns that don't have access, that don't have anything there. And so, yes, we did. The very first project we went and did on our trip 23 years ago, and actually it was Pentecost, the day we landed, was we remodeled a kindergarten in one of the villages, brought in playground equipment, put in computers so that they had access, okay? Just about anything is useful. Whatever your gifts, whatever your skills. And so that's kind of what we worked with, is just how to connect people and be able to see what could be done. The Cancer Project, when this came about, because of some of the issues we talked about, it really has grown because there are people in the U.S. who said we can make a difference. Lucia Samras at the Freeman Institute that lays all this out. Dr. Boyens, who's been on the ground over there and comes back and tells Sanford Global Clinics, look, we can do some work there. The Avera doctors that came alongside and said, Dr. Jihad, come in and stand with us in surgery. Let's work together to see how we can learn these things. That's kind of what's kept the breast cancer work going. It's a big need. At the same time, the navigation will work for just about everything else too. Once we can get the training on the ground of how to, now not all the navigators are going to be able to overcome these barriers. Some of these barriers are too big. But then how do you work with the person for the best quality of life? Our focus this coming year is going to be on palliative care. And I know Dr. Terry Peterson Henry has been advising us and has been very helpful in this. Why? Because over 70% of them are dying. While it's important that we get earlier detection, it's also important that we figure out how to help them when it isn't going to change. So, thank you for the question. It's important.
I just wanted to mention that you brought to my attention that if you buy from Amazon, they have a program where where you can donate through your purchases to In His Steps, and I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and I'm buying an awful lot from Amazon. So if you go on Amazon, there's a program in there. You can pick your
it's called Smile Amazon.
Okay.
Smile.amazon.com, and you can choose the nonprofit, and we are listed in there. You may have to put in the whole name, In His Steps, Pathways of Peace. Why? When we first started the organization, there was no In His Steps. Now you will find In His Steps Googled everywhere. You will find Pathways of Peace everywhere, but you don't find In His Steps Pathways of Peace, and that designates it. We've got that name. So thank you for bringing that up. It does make a difference in easy ways.
Any other questions? Well, Christy, I think we'll probably stay if you have some personal questions you want to talk with her about just for a few minutes, but I want to thank you for And, yes, and if you'll explain the table, what you
Yeah.
brought.
It's very simple today. I'm so thankful to be back with you, but I want to point out a couple of things they sent back with me. Most of the olive wood carving happens in Bethlehem. There's carvers everywhere. And what we brought back are simple little items. A heart, as we learned today, God loves each one of us. The other is the cross. And they're very plain, unadorned. But I tell you how useful they are, both in my prayer reminder each day, and also something not quite noticed. If you have arthritis in your hands, like I do, it really does massage the joints. Oh my goodness, it makes such a difference, and it's such a good reminder. These are simple things that the carvers have sent back with us to say, just use it as a reminder. If you can help, remember them. Remember how difficult it is to make a change. But you are the ones that are leading this. It is what you have done and what I expect you will continue to do in your prayers, in your support, in your remembrances of people that are struggling. Thank you.